some of the new stuff that's coming along, which is definitely interesting if you can get to that point, or if the industry evolves to that point. Basically, the future is, if you don't mind, sponsorships, right? A lot of companies out there, right? If you look at advertising, imagine a movie, right? When you're in your movie and you see a Starbucks, right? Some company paid a lot of money to get that Starbucks in there, or if a Ford drives by, that's not just there for the heck of it, right? There's a lot of money out there for advertising, which is really cool. The companies want a lot of brand exposure, and it's just figuring out how to get there. So over time, I imagine a lot more, you're going to see a lot more companies that are going to get into this, especially with how big social is, how many people are on social, and as I mentioned earlier, the fact that you can now reach a lot of people that you couldn't reach before, right? It's really, really exciting, actually. The last one that I'm going to put on that hasn't really shown up yet is subscriptions on the social. This is a model that people use across the net. You'll see it on some of the MMOs. You'll see it, and these are incredibly lucrative if done right. I don't think the games on Facebook have evolved to that point yet, but I imagine at some point in the close future it will get to that point. And when that happens, people stand to make a lot of money. Subscriptions are crazy, right? World of Warcraft makes so much money. It's like not even funny, right? So, anyways. Okay, so moving on. That was my overview. So let's get on to the good stuff. Chapter 2, right? The top says the key to monetization, economic control, ? Okay, and this is one of my favorite movies, Trading Places, Dan Aykroyd. My God, the Dukes are going to corner the entire frozen orange juice market. It was so exciting. I love that movie. But moving on to economic control, ? For me, when I'm looking at these applications, up top it says the number one monetization strategy is to create perceived value. Right? Everyone talks about economies. Everyone talks about the currencies, dual currencies. Really, it's all about perceived value. Right? It's how much people, right, they value a certain item, an experience, or even the application itself. It's what causes people to come back. What do they actually appreciate in that game, right? It's really, really important because, truthfully, if a person's behavior causes them to do a certain thing, you can monetize it, right? If people want to do this, you can make money off of it. That's essentially, businesses in general, and in the social realm, in gaming, that's really, it's really powerful if you know how to tweak people right in order to make money off of them. So, on there I'll also say be careful, it's a fine balance. Nick went into this in detail too, right? Don't be too crazy with it one way or the other. If you monetize too heavily, you're going to kill your app, right? We've seen it before, but you have to do it right at the right level with the growth of your application. Otherwise, you're doomed. Okay, the last one here. One more, please. So, in terms of the perceived value, I break this down into two levels. There's the micro level and the macro level, as I like to call it. So, examples of micro are going to be things like virtual goods, right? Or where you're buying a weapon, right? Or if you're buying a piece of clothing, or you're buying a plot of land or something like that, right? And the other one is, accelerated actions is another one. You'll see that a lot, where you can cut down on the time of building, or you can cut down on this or that or whatever in order by paying money, right? In essence, that's not something that's currency related. However, it does actually have value, and you can monetize off of it, right? So, again, that's not currency based, but it is another way that you can monetize, which is really cool. Another example that hasn't really taken off yet is something along the lines of like episodic expansions. So if you guys are on the iPhone, right? I have an iPhone right here. I'm always like the application market on there is pretty contagious. Pocket Gun on there on the iPhone is an excellent example. If you guys have seen it, right? They're like on episode 30 right now, and people are still buying that stuff, right? Like, it's good. So along those lines, that's something else to think about. If you have iterations on your application that can generate buzz and interest and get people to buy, right? Fantastic. So that's an example for me of a micro micro perceived value. Macro is basically just the overall value of your application. What kind of traffic can you get going to your application? And then how do you utilize that traffic, right? You don't have to do it on the order of, micro, as I talked about earlier, but you can actually do it on the macro level. So again, companies are really interested in this, big companies especially, about skinning, sponsorships, video placement, advertising. They love it. The question is, how do you make it? It's a fine balance in order to do that properly. Okay, so going into, on the top, it actually says The Science of Desire, a short study. And this was basically looking briefly at the psychology of perceived value, right? So one thing we're all trying to figure out is, what are the users thinking when they're going through this process? How can we analyze this, and how can we take advantage of it? What makes our games really, really unique? What makes people come back, right? It's very tough, and this actually gets into psychology and actually looking at behaviors and just basically seeing how people, what tweaks their brains, right? So what motivations drive people to desire more, right? And I have 6 up here, and I'm sure there's a heck of a lot more, but these are some of the really major ones, right? Individuality is a really big one. How am I unique, right? How can I buy weapons that no one has? How can I dress myself in category, like different types that makes me seem different than anyone else, right? It's a very powerful motivation. People love it all day long. Number 2, friendship and love, right? So virals are a big part of that, where you're going out and you're reaching out to people, but sending gifts to each other is all inside of friendship and love. And on all the, like some of the other major social platforms, love can get a little out of hand. So you got to be careful with that one. But it is a major driving force that, if utilized properly, can monetize really well. So just something to think about. Number 3, competition and war. That's a really huge one. Is that even if your friends are on there, and you can see it from the friends bar that is at the bottom of most of these applications, you want to beat that person, right? It's just how it is. And most games utilize that because it directly causes competition. Competition is a huge driver. You always want to be better than someone else. No one likes to lose. And people will pay money in order to upgrade themselves for that purpose. 4, collections. Beanie Babies, right? Need I say more? Everyone likes to collect. No one likes having 5 out of 6 of an item or a collection set, right? No matter what it is, whether it's virtual or if it's in real life. So it's a huge driving point, and it also gives you a wide range of diversity in which you can monetize. So number 5 is drama, right? Storylines. Trapping people into storylines and gripping them so that they want to know what the next step is, right? TV is completely based off of this. Pocket God is another thing, these things that create really, really rich storylines that you just want to follow. A lot of the major console games are actually going in this direction too, where they actually have fantastic stories. Even the gameplay is starting to suffer now because the storylines are just that good. So they're almost movies, even past movies in a lot of cases. And the last one is gambling. Gambling is a huge one, right? Everyone always thinks they'll be lucky. It is your job also to make sure they're not always lucky. And when that happens, you can make a lot of money off of it, right? Gambling is just inherent. Casinos, of course, right? So inside of that realm, there's a huge, huge way, especially when coupled up with the rest of these. Let's say I'm going to get, a war item, like a special, fantastic dagger that only shows up 3% of the time from something that's random, right? People will go for that, especially if there's no way else that you can get that thing. So gambling is a huge one. Okay. So next page, I have using perceived value. And so this is actually getting into currency, getting into economy, right? So the physical manifestation of perceived value is currency. So my major point is that right here it says that economic control is paramount to many, but not all monetization strategies, as I iterated to earlier. Basically, there are other ways to monetize besides the economy, but economies are great ways to monetize. And this is basically a lot of what Nick also said. Stole my thunder. If you utilize, dual currency economy, make both currencies of value is a big one too. Especially